Hello and welcome to India Career Center, the one stop podcast for students, professionals, parents, and guardians. In every episode, we will try to deal with a current topic that needs expert advice related to career guidance, and career mentoring. Please welcome your host, Dr. S.P. Mishra, to the show. And happy listening.
Hello and welcome to another episode on India Career Center. I'm delighted to host Mr. Julien Martinson, a aviation professional. Hi, Julien. How are you? And you're joining us from where today?
Good afternoon. I'm joining you from Toronto, Canada. It was a pleasure to be on your show today and to be invited to talk about an industry that I'm so passionate about. So thank you very much for having me on your podcast today.
Okay, to start our conversation, Julien, take us through your experience in the aviation industry because I know you have spent several years in the industry yourself and you have also educated yourself in this industry with your undergraduate and postgraduate courses. So take us through that journey of your career as well as your education.
Well, over the 20 years of experience that I've have in aviation, my experience includes in-flight operations, airside security, groundside security operations, as well as customer service for Canada's leading airline in the terminal. My uh, academic background includes language arts and business administration. And then I decided to continue my education with the studies in aviation management at Georgian College in Barrie, Ontario. And after that, I decided to continue my master's studies at Griffith University in Brisbane, Australia, with a full master's in aviation management. And my thesis was on my favorite subject. It's the global pilot supply and demand.
Okay, now to understand about how the industry was in 2023, I believe that was one of the record year in terms of the overall performance. So can you give us a overall sense of what was the total industry volume in terms of the top line or whatever? What is the number of passengers who traveled, number of airlines, number of aeroplanes? I think there are some wonderful graphics which are available on the internet where you can see continuously aeroplanes are graphically moving around. So it's a great treat to see those things. But if you can take us through these numbers to give an overview of the industry for 2023.
Yes, there is an app called Flight Path 24, and on that app you can actually see the airplanes live in the sky as they are crossing the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean. And many times I've used that app to track flights as they land and as they taxi around the airport. And you can see, oh, well, he's making a turn there, and you walk through the window and you see the airplane on the ramp. But having a look at some of the macro numbers of the aviation industry. So the International Civil Aviation Organization is an umbrella of the United Nations, and they help 193 countries cooperate together within the aviation context. So the aviation industry is a little bit like a family. So all the countries have to kind of cooperate together in order to make it a safe and efficient environment. And the International Civil Aviation Organization is the organization that oversees that, and they have offices all over the world, including Montreal, for an example. Their current projections for the 2023 is approximately 8.7 billion passengers, which is 95% of the 2019 passenger volume. There are more than 5,000 airlines in the world and 9,728 airplanes in the sky at any one given moment, carrying more than 1 million 270,000 passengers at any given time. So this is quite a large number, and it requires a lot of cooperation and regulation by multiple levels. IATA's mission, that's the International Aviation Air Transportation Association, has 320 airlines representing 120 different countries. So by no means is it a small organization. And they've estimated that 10 years ago they had 10,000 airports worldwide. However, now the count has gone up to 40,000 airports worldwide, including helicopter pads, runways, fields, and commercial and private general aviation landing strips. There are about 400 commercial aircraft taking off every hour. And in the United States, there are more than 13,513 airports. So it's the largest country with the highest number of airports in the world. So the global market for airlines is estimated to be $638 billion, and it is projected to reach 1.1 trillion, which is an increase of 7.6% of annual growth in monetary spending.
So, which means that there is a huge amount of opportunity, as you mentioned, by 2030, the growth in number of airlines as well as in terms of the overall value. That's a huge jump which we are expecting because of the number of travelers increasing. And any particular reason which I think which is also there in your book, also we'll come to the book a little later. Uh, any specific reason why you think the air traffic is something which is constantly increasing? What are the primary reasons?
So yes, the reasons why aviation industry is seeing such a surge in passenger volume and in passenger demand is, number one, the increase in domestic income. So as the domestic income increases per family, they have more disposable income. And so when this happens, family members will want to explore the world, and therefore they will purchase airfare tickets. Number two, we've seen a lot of deregulation in the industry. So that means countries are withdrawing their visa requirements and COVID requirements, inoculations, etc. And so the paperwork that's required to travel abroad is being eliminated to a certain extent. And so this makes it easier for people to travel if they do not need to require visas and other things that become prohibitive in traveling. The third reason is that we've seen the introduction of the low-cost carrier already for 10 years ago, but they're taking a larger and larger market share of the industry. And so their motto for air travel is providing air travel at the lowest possible price. And they make their incomes off of auxiliary fees and other ways. However, this has made air travel so much more affordable to the general public. Number four, we've seen the modification of aircraft design, which includes the carbon fiber fabrication of aircraft. So we're moving from steel aircraft to carbon fiber composite materials. So the whole aircraft by itself is now lighter weight than before. Therefore, we're able to fly a longer distance with the same fuel cost as before. And number three is that we're seeing the introduction of the Airbus 321 long range. So this enables passengers to fly from medium-sized airports to another medium-sized airport on a shorter runway without having to transfer through a hub. So hubs in the old days, the hubs were critical in terms of connecting flights. However, with this new aircraft, passengers will not need to connect through hubs. They can just fly directly to their final destination. For an example, you can fly from with the Airbus 331 long range. You could fly from a medium-sized airport such as Victoria, British Columbia, to Nice, France. So it can get you straight from the West Coast straight to the beach in France without traveling through a major airport like Vancouver or Charles de Gaulle, which traditionally would have to go through one of those hubs. So this is open for all those combination of reasons. It has made it so much easier for people to travel, and this is not going to be stopping. This momentum is going to keep going. Recently, we have seen the purchase of 500 Airbus 321 by Indigo Airlines, and this was announced at the Paris Air Show recently, and which is the largest single aircraft purchase in the history of aviation. And so with this purchase, it's not only excellent for the industry, but it also shows the confidence that Indigo Airlines has in their traveling public. And so as those orders start coming in, they will start putting those aircraft into operation, which is going to require manpower. Now, the average airplane requires between 60 and 140 personnel, from flight crew to ramp crew to sales and marketing and through other services depending on the structure of the airline. So with each aircraft that the airline brings on, they are going to require so much more personnel. For example, with each aircraft, you may need up to 8 pilot crew. So with every aircraft, you would need an additional 16 new pilots. So if an airline is bringing on 10 new aircraft in a single year, they would need 160 new pilots. But where are they getting the pilots from? So the bigger airlines will hire from the smaller airlines and the small airlines from the schools. But the question is, are the schools recruiting enough pilots to meet the future demand? And this is the critical question in order to meet pilot supply and demand. Now in Canada, recently with Sunwing, they have had to cancel their flight operations out of Winnipeg, servicing 2 destinations in Mexico due to operational needs, which I interpret as a lack of pilot workforce. They just can't find the pilots. And so you're also looking at the international supply and demand of pilots.
Fantastic. So you initially mentioned that each aircraft, with the addition of each aircraft, you may need about 60 additional people, which includes the pilot and all other staff, right?
Sorry, yeah. So it depends very much on the design of um the the service flow of the airline. So if you have a very simple service flow structure like Southwest Airlines, that is low cost carrier, you may need up to 60 employees for each additional aircraft, depending on the size of the aircraft. If you have a larger airline like Cathay Pacific with 3 service classes,
Oh,
um, yeah, 3 service classes and a complex fleet with big airplanes, medium airplanes, and small airplanes, you require inventory of parts, which is more difficult to manage than just an airline with one fleet type. And
mm,
so in a scenario like that, you may need up to 160 staff members for each aircraft acquisition that they add to their fleet. So it depends on the size of the aircraft. If you've got little airplanes, it's more simple. But if you have the bigger airplanes with multiple classes, economy class, premium economy, and business class, that means you need 3 sets of meals, 3 sets of in-flight entertainment, et cetera, et cetera. So this is more complex. And every time it gets more complex, you need more staff in order to deliver that service. However, we're just talking about flight deck crew. You need approximately 8 crews per aircraft because each aircraft has a captain and a first officer. So we're
Yeah.
talking about 2 people in the cockpit. And so for each aircraft acquisition, you would need 16 additional pilots approximately. However, the aircraft itself, it's a machine and it flies 7 days a week, ideally. And so having a tight schedule means that the airline makes more money. So to maximize the revenue, they want to the airlines will want to schedule that aircraft with the maximum amount of flight hours in a week. However, the human body cannot work like that. So that an average pilot would fly around 20 hours. So then therefore it justifies the multiple crews,
Yeah. Makes sense.
regardless of whether you're doing international or domestic.
Makes sense. Makes
Yeah.
sense. And I think all this knowledge you have tried to put together in your book, which is called the Ultimate Guide to Careers in Aviation. So take us briefly through this book. What was the motivation for you to write this book, and what you would like to actually achieve through this book in terms of communicating to the target audience?
Right. So just to take one step back, with my thesis in global pilot supply and demand, I came to realize that there was a big disparity among pilots, and that not all regions would grow in the same way. And so I decided to write the book as an introduction to aviation careers, that being pilot, air traffic control, aviation management, which is airline and airport management, and aircraft engineer. So those 4 careers, which are the toughest ones for the industry um, to fill because it requires a lot of education in order to achieve those roles. And so in the book, I talk about the global trends that I've already discussed in this interview, as well as the surge in passenger volume, which is not going to change. And also, I talk about the various trends in aviation, being environmental trends, the need to recycle, being environmentally aware, um, passenger volume, the congestion that we face in many of the big hubs, and the underutilization of medium to smaller sized airports, which is definitely going to change over the next 10 years. And so the book is targeted to Gen Z, young people. So that's people aged between 12 and 28 who are in the position of still exploring careers, and they've just come out of high school, and they want a little bit of information about aviation careers. So this is an ideal book, an introductory book for them, where they can have a complete overview of the aviation industry, and then they can choose which career they would like to read on. Or you could read on all 4 careers and then decide if you want more information about one specific career. The final chapter of the book talks a little bit about networking, resume writing, and those types of things, where to find jobs and where uh, what schools provide the programs that are required in order to get those high-paying, stable career jobs that people are seeking.
Okay, as you mentioned, one of the biggest bottleneck in the aviation industry would be the availability of trained pilots. I think they are the most crucial people in this whole equation. Of course, all the other categories, like for example, the air traffic controller or the aircraft engineer or the aviation management, I think all of them are equally important. But the skill and the availability of trained pilots is one of the biggest um, factor, so to speak.
Uh,
So, as an industry, I mean, since you're in the industry for last 2 decades, what are the challenges actually this industry is facing with respect to training more pilots for the future? Why we are not able to bring more trained pilot into the system? What are the challenges?
So the challenges for becoming a pilot is often the financial challenges. So to become a commercial pilot, you're looking at multiple years of study and up to around $80,000 of capital investment to become a pilot. Some of the barriers that young people may face getting into this occupation is the possibility of having to do remote work. So this means that while the pilot may have a family located in Kitchener, for an example, the airline may say, well, we need you based in northern Canada, or we need you based in the south of France in order to do the work. And so you may have to be separated from your family for long periods of time before you can return to your home base. So this can be particularly difficult for young people who have an established family or who have children, where you may be in a scenario where you have to separate from your spouse in order to pursue your career. And then after a certain period of time, and you've accumulated the hours, you could move back to your home base. Also, you need a lot of family support in order to pursue this career. Uh, Often parents fund the education for their child, and they support that. However, then you need to compare that with other career options like
Mm.
the medical field. You may not need to be displaced, or if you want to study law or business, you may not have to face those types of displacement scenarios. Uh, Supply and demand is a critical component of aviation. So traditionally, the legacy carriers have counted on a pilot workforce that have been extremely financially secure and with strong family ties. Um, However, the new generation coming in may not be like that, um, which means that if an airline is offering $50,000 more per year in the Middle East or in Asia, that young pilot may just say, okay, well, I apply over there, and they will be able to get that job because the wages are just more lucrative. And if you don't have the family ties, um, and you don't have children, for example, it's easier to make those types of decisions.
So basically, my intent of asking this question was to understand whether there are sufficient number of flying schools across India, across the globe, to train sufficient number of pilots. Probably that's not the challenge. The challenge is actually how to manage the post training life of a pilot in on the job, because that becomes very challenging. I think whatever you explained now is more to, of course, you mentioned that $80,000 is what is required to train, and multiple number of years of study to become a trained commercial pilot. So the initial cost is prohibitive for many people, and the profession itself can be very challenging with respect to staying away from your family for an extended period of time and so on and so forth. But as such, you don't see a challenge with respect to the number of training institutions across the world, right?
There's a little bit disconnect in the industry from my observations. The flight schools are doing this, and the airlines are ordering big airplanes, but the airlines may not see if the schools are recruiting enough pilots to meet the future demand. And so there's a little bit of a disconnect between one organization and the other organization. Um, so to that end, there are organizations that do oversee that. There's the International Air Pilots Association, ALPA, and there are other air organizations in Canada, and they have observed this discrepancy and have made recommendations as to how to address a potential labor shortage. Now, having a labor shortage in in the workforce is not is not new. Other industries has had labor shortages in terms of the nursing industry had a labor shortage in Australia, and so they've compensated that by uh, enabling foreign nurses to come into Australia to provide work. The fashion industry in the UK also had a labor shortage and high turnover. So there are certain things that employers can do to attract talent and skill, but not just to attract them, but to retain them. And so the new generation of people coming in, a Gen Z coming into the workforce, they have a much different mindset and approach to the workforce, the work than did the baby boomers. And so they want to feel integrated into the work that they do. They want to feel that the work that they're doing has meaning and value. And whereas the previous generations did not have that need, they were just like, we work and that's just it. And we provide the labor and we're filling a role, but we don't need to feel that our work is meaningful. However, the new generation does have that need. And so the burden lies now on the employer in order to explain and to give meaning to what the workers are doing. The industry may need to change how they attract, recruit, and train and retain their skill set.
So moving on, you have dealt with four different categories of aviation industry professions in your book, and the four of them, one of it, I think we discussed quite well about the pilots. The other three are related to air traffic controller, aircraft engineering, and aviation management. So in these categories, if you can give us some sense of kind of what kind of opportunities are there available now and how these demands are going to grow by 2030.
So regarding air traffic control, each jurisdiction will have their own air traffic control authority. For an example, in Canada, we have NAV Canada, and the UK, we have NATES, the National Air Traffic Control System, NATES. In the United States, it's the FFA. So each country has their own air traffic control authority. So you have to apply directly to them. And depending on the size of the country and the geography, you may be positioned at a small airport, a medium-sized airport, or a very large airport, or you may be positioned at a station where your territory is very large and you're overseeing the aircraft in your area. In terms of air traffic, aircraft engineer, there's lots of opportunities for growth. That being particularly with the development of supersonic flight and outer space flight. Those issues are not going away, and they're still tickling people's curiosity, and so this will always become a necessity. Furthermore, we have the introduction of drones, manned and unmanned drones. So this will continue to, as the years progress, it'll continue to take on a bigger and bigger role of the aviation industry in terms of engineering and inspecting buildings, and in terms of uh, search and rescue operations, the military operations, as well as health services, and the delivery of the last mile in terms of delivering packages to remote locations. And so this comes again with its own regulations and policy, and the potential of drone pirates, people stealing sneakers out of the air. So this is a potential problem with drones. Yeah, and in terms of aviation management, now that career splits into two: airline operations manager and airport management. So airlines are also facing their own challenges in terms of carbon offsetting, recycling, going green. All those types of initiatives are not going away, and they will continue to be on the forefront of the airline industry, as well as with airport growth. So passengers are becoming more and more demanding in terms of the resources and the experiences that they want out of an airport. Traditionally, airports were a transition point from one mode of transportation to another mode of transportation. So they would go from a car or a railroad mode of transportation to an air mode form of transportation. However, this is not the case. Airports have now become a destination in of itself, and we see that in Shanghai International Airport with their big um, solarium, and their in train systems and hotel systems, and a lot of shopping. Airports have become economic superpower of the city and the country of itself. Heathrow Airport uh, brings in, I don't know how many jobs and how many pounds to the economy of the UK, that it's simply not just it's not to be overlooked in the slightest. It becomes a significant contributor to the economy and to the employment, and that could be said for many airports around the world. And so the airports have to become more and more efficient. And that being said, now with the introduction of the Airbus 321 long range, it'll open up the opportunities for medium-sized airports to take on a bigger role. So we're seeing smaller airports that are taking on um, a distinct airport concept. So while they are small, they think like big airports. They want a concept, they want a brand, they want an image, they want to be globally connected. Um, so yeah, so smaller airports like Halifax or Victoria now can become an international destination by itself, with the and well, by welcoming the Airbus 321, and they could become an international hub, therefore relieving a lot of the passenger volume out of the hubs.
So when you mentioned about the size of airport two, three times. So is there an international standard which defines airport to be small, medium, or large, or what is the definition?
Well, there are standards. So it depends on the volume of aircraft coming in and the size of the airplanes that are landing there, and so therefore classifications are set. But there are airports that maybe only have 2 flights a day or 40 flights a day, and there are airports that have 60 flights coming and going every hour, like Toronto Pearson Airport.
So how do you see the future trends, especially, I mean, when it comes to the aviation fuel? I think we keep hearing about the sustainable aviation fuel. A lot of experiments happening already on that. So apart from the fuel, what else new trends are we seeing, or are we going to see in the future for aviation industries?
Well, the future trends are so there's lots of environmental trends. There's carbon offsetting, electric aircraft are a big trend. Um, and there's still some uncertainties about what happens if your aircraft runs out of batteries. However, they're still introducing electric aircraft for smaller operations. Um, uh, and there's also manned and unmanned aircraft, which is still a big trend that is not going away. And as people find new uses and applications for manned and unmanned drones, um, it'll become a bigger and bigger part of the aviation network, with requiring added regulation. Asia represents 53% of the global passenger aviation volume, which is huge. It's very big. They say that India has the highest propensity to travel, which means that uh, India is a very large continent, but people want to discover and explore the world on their own. And so each one by one, is they're booking flights for their own. And so the increase in passenger
Mm.
volume within that population demographic is going to get higher and higher. So now the challenge that means is that for airlines, typically, airline operations have catered around the Western norm of social conduct, and what it has catered to Western norms. But as we see a cultural shift in our passenger volume, this will also need to be addressed. Also, we're going to see an increase in multiculturalism and passengers with special needs, including the elderly. And so this was also going to become a bigger part of the airline and airport operation, is catering to a large number of special needs.
Mm.
Yeah.
And you mentioned about carbon emission. So, do you see in a few years we will also see carbon tax being levied on passengers?
I don't know if that's going to work or not. The global aviation industry, they do make recommendations. Those recommendations are taken on by each country, and then each country is pushes those recommendations down to the airlines and the airports. Now, it's not the people themselves that make the pollution, it's the aircraft. So it'll have to go back to the aircraft manufacturers to be able to produce aircraft that are carbon neutral, or that emit fewer um, carbon emissions. So this was going to be a critical area. And finally, it requires the cooperation of both national policy, standardized national policy, as well as the cooperation of airports, as well as the cooperation of airlines and aircraft manufacturers. And so once you put those four components together, you may have opposing views that in order to achieve those standards, it may be more costly, and so it doesn't become very effective to impose those standards if it comes at an increased price. And so sometimes there's a little bit of reluctance. They recycle one thing to get a lot of publicity, while they overlook and throw smoke on another area that is a little bit more of a problem. And so you see a little bit of that too in the industry.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I know. I mean, these are things which will evolve in due course of time. Um, so I think we actually have covered quite a bit of ground today in terms of discussing the overview of how the industry looks like and things like that. So Julian, thank you for sharing all your insight uh, from your professional career, and also all the insights from your book. And I would encourage the young students and young parents who are wanting to learn more about this industry. There's the wonderful book which is written by Julien Martinson. It's available on Amazon.
It's Amazon, and it's also available on other platforms as well
Okay,
as yeah. So just Google the Ultimate Guide to Careers in Aviation.
fantastic.
Yes, I'm always available online, and you can reach out to me on my website at www.julianmartinson.com, and I provide career coaching is available, and I'm also available as an aviation speaker. Should there be any career events coming up, I can would be welcome as I'd be welcomed as an aviation speaker
Fantastic.
as well. Yeah.
Great. So, Julian, thank you so much for giving your time today and sharing all your insight about the industry. It's really a fascinating industry, great opportunity for young people who want to, build a career in this industry. And to learn more about the industry, obviously, you can read the book, which is fantastic. It's a good, easy read. It's not very complicated, decent paced, and number of chapters are there to talk about different subjects. So I would encourage people who are interested to get into the industry to go ahead and buy this book and follow Julian on his website and on his social media platforms, and reach out to him in case you want to have a one-to-one chat with him. So with those words, I thank you once again for your time today, and look forward to catching up with you sometimes later. Maybe talk a little more in deep about a particular subject in the aviation industry.
Thank you. It was a pleasure for me to be on your podcast, and I wish you all the best, and I look forward to staying in touch with you in the future.
Thank you so much.
Hope you enjoyed this episode. We sincerely wish you could take something from our conversation today and be able to apply it to your life in a positive way. We value your feedback. This can help us improve our future episodes. So share your thoughts to serve you better. If you want us to focus on a topic which you think is of importance, let us know. We will share our expertise in future episodes. So, see you soon with a new topic and help you in your career journey.